This was the question from one of our listeners. She wrote me and shared, how do you lose the weight gain around the waist when you finish getting through perimenopause and get to menopause? Because I do the resistance training 4 times a week, eat healthy, and my weight won't budge. Unfortunately, this is a very common struggle. I experienced it myself. When I read this, and she is not unusual. This is not an unusual comment. This is not something it's not the first time I've heard this. I understand it because I can visualize this, because I personally went through exactly what she was talking about. Number one, I didn't even realize I was in perimenopause. I think the term is somewhat new. We're just starting to get more of this terminology out there as far as what all these hormonal changes mean and how they show up and what we're supposed to do once we're in that stage. So much confusion. And then you add in type 1 diabetes, which is another, just a hot mess, something that we can't take a day off. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Type 1 in Midlife podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Slemp. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 14 years old and now founder and CEO of Abundant Health with Melissa. And as a certified health coach, I know the unique challenges of managing diabetes in midlife and beyond. So I've created a coaching model that has empowered hundreds of women to thrive despite their diagnosis. And each week, I'll bring you conversations and strategies with guest experts, along with insights from my own 40 plus years of living with type 1 diabetes. I'll also share how my faith empowers me both emotionally and helps me to navigate the daily challenges. So if you're a woman ready to redefine your diabetes journey, this podcast is for you. So before we dive in, remember this podcast isn't a substitute for personalized medical advice. Always consult with your physician or medical professional before making any changes to your diet, insulin dosages, or healthcare plan. Hello and welcome to this week's episode. I'm in here by myself this week, solo. I love these solo episodes. I get to come in and just pour some love and information into you. And this week, we're going to be talking about the stubborn weight that we can tend to get living with diabetes, and as we're aging with diabetes. And sometimes they go hand in hand and they can be exaggerated when we are getting older. So I can't wait to dive into this topic. And before I get going, before we get started, I wanted to share a 5-star review left by Leanne at Leanne Loves Ya over on Apple. And she writes and shares, great pod. Melissa has such a calming voice that makes this podcast even better to listen to. Never mind the thoughtful interviews, insightful guests, and wide range of topics. I recommend to anyone with diabetes or anyone who knows someone with diabetes to help them understand the disease better. And we appreciate you taking the time, Leanne, and sharing this right here on Apple. And just so these reviews, they make this show happen. The more ratings and reviews we get to get closer to more people. We get to get further on the search engine of how this all works in this podcasting world, and we get to meet and get in front of more women just like you. And we also get to spread our mission. We get to get some amazing guests on here. I continue to share free content, and we appreciate all you can do. So if you can take just a minute or two out of your day, you can do that right now as you're listening. And again, hop over to iTunes right here on Apple and leave me a review and a 5-star rating. It would be even better. We would love that. And just let us know that you're listening and that you enjoy the show. And please visit me over on abundanthealthwithmelissa.com/podcast if you have any questions, show ideas, feedback. I'd love to hear from you. Again, this show is here for you. That is my mission here, to serve and to provide a safe and value-filled show for women living with type 1 diabetes, starting in perimenopause, all the way through postmenopause. And we sure hope that we are doing a good job at that. So thanks again. So this week is inspired. So I'm doing these questions and messages that I'm getting from my people that are listening to the show and people that are in my community. And this came from a listener, and she shared, this is a very common question. So that is why not only am I sharing this with you, but I've created a free webinar that is coming up. More details on that. So I'm going to expand on the topic that I'm going to talk about in much more detail. And that will be on September 17th. So that's a Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern time. That is where I hop on Zoom for an hour. You're invited to join me for this presentation, for really good nuggets of information and a chance to meet other women, to ask questions, and to set a stage. It's about opening up a topic, a conversation and this is what I do with these free sessions, I call them, or free webinars, is to give back and to really get the conversation out, pour in the information. A lot of the things that I've learned, things I continue to do, it's things I can't keep to myself. This is important information because we need to go through this disease and transitioning through menopause together. We cannot do it alone. So these sessions, these webinars that I host, serve that purpose. And you always walk away with some points to consider, some steps you can take, and then you always have a chance to book a consultation with me, and we can talk further about the topic and your specific area around this topic, because it's not a one size fits all. So the information I share is general. It's general, and it's very targeted on that specific topic. But I know, as also as a woman living with diabetes, and who's gone through this myself, that this is an ongoing process. And some of us need ongoing support and accountability. And that is what I do as a coach. So this was the question from one of our listeners. She wrote me and shared, how do you lose the weight gain around the waist when you finish getting through perimenopause and get to menopause? Because I do the resistance training 4 times a week, eat healthy, and my weight won't budge. Unfortunately, this is a very common struggle. I experienced it myself. When I read this, and she is not unusual. This is not an unusual comment. This is not something it's not the first time I've heard this. I understand it because I can visualize this, because I personally went through exactly what she was talking about. Number one, I didn't even realize I was in perimenopause. I think the term is somewhat new. We're just starting to get more of this terminology out there as far as what all these hormonal changes mean and how they show up and what we're supposed to do once we're in that stage. So much confusion. And then you add in type 1 diabetes, which is just a hot mess. Something that we can't take a day off. We can't take time off from. It's constant. It's there. So when we add in something like with hormones, that especially in the perimenopause stage, there's a lot of transition there. So I think that's probably the worst time, because there's no real steady gauge or consistency about what you're feeling. Even your blood sugar can be not as consistent just based on those hormonal changes. So, and again, this is different for every woman. But one of the things that does happen, like she was mentioning here in her question, was I'm doing all the things, and what I'm doing is no longer working. And Unfortunately, that's true. And that is, there's a lot of reasons behind that. And I think that is what my goal is, because I continue to learn about this topic. I follow some amazing functional medicine doctors and OBs that are in the space that are experts in hormones, not only the endocrine system, but the reproductive, or in our case, the post reproductive, the later years. How impactful it is. Hormones are so connected and they're so intertwined. And it's hard for us women. It's harder for us women. And it's 10 times harder for us women who also manage type 1 diabetes, or any sort of insulin resistance. There's definitely some of you who I'm coaching as well that are pre-diabetic, getting that scare from the doctor. Your fasting glucose numbers are starting to go up and it's time to pay attention. And did you know that there is a strong correlation with, again, because this is insulin resistance as we're aging, it's a known fact, it's going to happen, but that correlation between midlife, low hormones, estradiol is dropping, and the body's inability to utilize glucose. So when all this is happening, the side effects, those symptoms, as I call them, can be weight gain. And then we talk about all those other symptoms that menopause brings, the low energy, the cravings, right? The headaches, the body aches, poor sleep, our skin gets affected, gut microbiome. That is another hot topic. And I will be in here talking more about that because I personally have experienced that. Again, what these hormones are doing, again, women dropping hormones and the hormone of insulin, all those things that are doing to the health of our gut. So Kelly Schmidt will be back in here soon. So stay tuned for that episode. We're going to really dive into my own dilemma that I just personally went through this past year and what I'm learning from it and where I am on the other side of it. Again, this is information we all need to know, not necessarily being discussed by your doctor. And again, it can be that elephant in the room that nobody really understands how to bring up or talk about. So we tend to not talk about it. We just kind of brush it off and think it's just another part of aging. Well, guess what? Once we learn, and I'm a big believer in digging for the truth, that's what I do for my own health and for the clients that I help, looking at the root cause, looking at all the variables, looking at what is not quite where it should be. So when we look back at this question and the topic of today's show, which is trimming down, how do we lose that stubborn weight with type 1 diabetes once our hormones are shifting, dropping into menopause and further into postmenopause? So, and I've shared on this show, lots of times it's part of the conversation that I bring in with all the different amazing guests that I have, that this is the reason I coach. I see the need. I see the gap in the medical system, not only the emotional support that we lack, but just the putting all the pieces together to really giving us what we need as patients, as women living with diabetes, in order to really not only just survive menopause, but to thrive through it, because there's stumbling blocks along the way. We can definitely expect that. Weight gain is obviously one of them. In some cases, it's more or less for many of us. But to really understand that and to be able to spend time and attention on what we need to feel our best. So that is my goal. And again, that webinar, I will link it here in the show notes. You can visit abundanthealthwithmelissa.com/trim down to grab your free seat. And if you can't make it live on September 17th, it's a noon time. I try to do it at noon. So maybe you could hop on during your lunch hour. You could plan your lunch hour around listening in or participating. Sign up anyway, because I will be sending you the recording with all the goodies and you get to take part in that way. So I hope you decide to join us. So trimming down. So, something I want to emphasize too, this is a part of what I support many women on. And it's not necessarily what I call my coaching. I'm not a weight loss coach, but weight in this context and just this topic we're talking about is a symptom. And I do coach around symptoms. So that's something that I help to support. And we talk through when we have our sessions, when I work one-on-one with women, is again realizing where you are, what's happening, and things to bring up to your doctor, tests to get done, just to see all the facts so that you can make a decision about the different choices that you're going to make going forward. And of course, it includes diet, exercise, stress reduction, improving our sleep, all the things we know we need to do. But it's really about putting that formula in place that's the key, and it's sustainable. And you get to go through it, whether you're watching a webinar with me, or if you're part of my community here, or you're listening to our shows every week, or you decide to work with me one-on-one. It's so important to have some sort of connection to information that you can rely on, trust, and that you can take forward into your own action plans, your own daily routine, because it's so specific for you and who you are. I don't coach anybody the same. Everybody's got their own history, their own present things going on, and they all have their own goals. You each have your own goals, and that's what makes it so powerful. So what I was mentioning is the goal of my webinar and what I'm talking about here today is not those unrealistic weight goals. I think it's really, when we live with diabetes and there's enough frustration with overwhelm with what we have to do every day and to keep track of, and the underlying kind of feelings that we have when our hormones are not in balance, that just makes it a little more dramatic, or in some cases, much more dramatic. So I think all of these things can mount and compound and make what seems like a bunny hill most days, just to kind of get through your day, manage your blood sugar, fit in all your responsibilities, work, family, home life, all of those things. And then when you get that thing that kind of sideswipes you and says, oh my gosh, I was kind of humming along okay. And suddenly I'm feeling frustrated because, we put effort and time and planning into what we eat and how we manage our blood sugar and our doctor's appointments and managing stress, right? And that is a big part of what I'm going to be sharing in this webinar. And I talk about it here on the show a lot. So we will continue to be talking about that. Just to give you a highlight, and again, just to talk more about what are the pieces that are really causing this weight gain, right? Well, there's a lot of different hormones involved. We talk about insulin a lot, and definitely we're getting more insulin resistant. And that is naturally going to add weight. And again, this can be a slow process. It doesn't happen overnight. Excuse me as I take a drink. But over time, when our body is not utilizing glucose as it once did, we're probably losing muscle. We're having, it takes more effort to get the protein sources in every day to meet those standard those daily requirements. And all this just keeps adding up. And then we've got estradiol that is tanking, right? It's low. Progesterone is low. We can't sleep as well. We're hot. We're waking up hot. So that makes our sleep even worse. All these things, right? And then we're asked as women to continue on, to continue to take care of our life, continue to work and our responsibilities, and the blood sugar and the site changes and the pump changes and the doctor's appointments. Don't forget about the doctor's appointments. And it's constant. So when we have that variable of hormones, the low reproductive hormones coming into the picture, it surmounts. And guess what that does? It adds more stress. And we all know what stress does. And these are things I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to unpack all these different hormones. So, things that we are hearing more about lately are the GLP-1. So, the Trigero, the Monjaro, I'm probably saying them wrong. I do have to watch my pronunciation on some of these. Metformin is another one that really does aid, and a lot of obviously type 2s are using metformin to help aid and boost their insulin sensitivity. Type 1s are now starting to use it. Ozempic is hot. It's getting more and more talked about, more and more utilized and prescribed by doctors to help us. And this is definitely a path you can take, but no amount of hormones is going to fix the foundational problems that we are probably kind of surmounting. So again, we're talking about the way we eat, how we eat. Are we restricting too many calories? That's another thing to consider. So fasting is a hot topic right now. And again, there are ways to use fasting to help us, and there are ways to use fasting that do not help a woman aging with type 1 diabetes because it is impacting our cortisol. So that wake response when we are becoming more insulin resistant. So if you're obviously really experiencing the dawn phenomenon, I know that was me in my late 40s. And it's something that I didn't understand what was happening. I really thought I was just doing everything wrong, that, the insulin wasn't working or this, that, or the other. But, that could always be part of the problem. But when you're looking at that consistently and you're seeing things that just don't make sense, that is what we're going to be learning in this webinar. So I am giving you some sneak peeks today. So again, we're going to be talking about some other hormones in check besides the insulin. So the GLP-1s, the ghrelin, the leptin, and all those ones that really do dictate our hunger and fullness cues. So they naturally fall as we age. So we've got to find ways to kind of fill in that gap, to make up that difference. But I want you to be able to do that in a non-restrictive way, not with rules, not extreme exercise, not skipping meals, and all of that. So that is what I'm going to help guide you through in the webinar on September 17th. And again, we want it to be realistic. We don't want this to feel like we're being beat up by diabetes or that we're being trapped by all the things that we have to do just to survive. Again, we want to find ways to get through this time of life with a happier sense, to manage these hormones. And insulin is something that we talk about insulin as far as dosing. But I'm going to help to explain really the role of insulin and being a little more mindful, or in some cases more mindful, lots more mindful of just the total insulin that you are injecting and how that's maybe changed over time. And we're so lucky to have these reports, our pump reports, even my InPen is giving me that data to look back at the trends. And again, it's not judgment. It's not beating yourself up for what you're eating and dosing for. It's learning from it. And that is what we will continue to do. Another thing we'll be talking about is our workouts, the type of workouts, and the timing of our workouts, and how we can bring in more movement that's going to be more gentle in our body and to lower those cortisol levels, because stress and cortisol, that is not a woman's friend after the age of 40. And the best thing we can do is realize that and to come to terms with that, and just to find some ways to better manage that within our busy schedules. So just a hint, we talked a little bit about all of the insulin, or all the hormones that are involved with weight, and how we can successfully trim down to a healthy weight that can be sustainable. And we talked about cortisol. We talked about the GLP-1, so the Ozempics, the metformin. Again, it's really good. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to just showcase all of these specific hormones, how they interact with your body, and give you some resources and tools to make an action plan for yourself. Another thing is, and I haven't even brought it up, we're definitely talking menopause, because we always talk about that here on the show. But another really, really important key, and I will be talking further on this in this 1 hour webinar session, is hormone replacement therapy. And it's a big driver. It can definitely make this transition a whole lot easier. And I'm going to share with you all the pros and dispel all the myths, because there's a lot of information out there that's very confusing. I'm going to help clear up a lot of those myths, again, based on experts, doctors that I follow. I'm not a doctor. I can't give you medical advice, but I am going to share what I've learned from very valid, amazing resources that you can refer to as well, just to to follow through with what I'm going to teach and share with everybody. But know that I think the number one thing that I do here, and I do in these webinars that I host, is just to get through all the noise. There's so much information out there. It's too much information. And it's hard to know what your step should be, right? What's your first step? What's something you can work on right now that's doable, that you can put into your schedule, that it's not going to feel like it's causing you more stress, because that's just the opposite of what we need. And that's really why we are here, is just to provide that for you and to give you, and the guests that I have coming in. I have so many amazing guests coming up. Stay tuned for some future episodes that we're just going to keep expanding on this topic to give you sound, easy, direct advice on things that you can take, things that you can bring to your doctor, and feel empowered by that. That's the most important thing, I think, when it's all said and done, is just to understand what's going to work for you and to feel empowered about bringing that to the doctor, getting these tests done, learning more about HRT, the different types, the different formulas. And I'll definitely share more about that too here on the show and in this webinar. So, oh my gosh. So let's not feel overwhelmed. Let's feel supported. Know that there are practitioners and coaches like myself, or we are here to help you. We are here to help guide you, because we are you. I have been where you are, and I know the confusion and the overwhelm that can come in this stage of life. And we are different, ladies. We have a autoimmune disease that takes a lot of attention. And when we hit menopause, we are like no other woman. We are above and exceptional, because we have so many other things in play here. And again, we're going to talk more and more about these hormones that I mentioned in the webinar, and you get to learn more about how they can, it's something that you can, ask for testing on. Again, it's just awareness. Awareness is key. And just to recap too, who should attend? So you might be wondering, okay, well, I'm not sure, maybe my age, maybe I'm not old enough, maybe I'm not quite having the weight struggles yet. I don't know if that is where you are, but if you are 40 or older, living with type 1, or maybe you've had a similar insulin resistance diagnosis, maybe pre-diabetes, your doctor's tested your fasting insulin levels, they're starting to get a little bit higher, maybe over the 100 milligram per deciliter mark, which is the general standard. I think 95 is the cutoff now, but that's good information, really good information. And getting your fasting insulin levels checked, that is a powerful tool. I am recommending that to more and more of my clients and friends that are struggling. Again, many of them are in these hormonal stage changes, and they're noticing all these changes with their weight, their insulin resistance, being told they may have to get on metformin or Ozempic. So there's a lot of reasons why to be and to come and join us. But if you're putting on weight despite doing all the things, if this scenario that I shared and the feedback that I received, the question I received from our listener here, and you're looking for long-term solutions, you're like, okay, I've had enough of this. I don't want to feel overwhelmed. But I'm not willing to jump on a diet. I don't want crash diets. I don't want to starve myself or fast or cut my insulin doses, because I think maybe less insulin is going to pack on less pounds. And we'll definitely talk more about that whole concept in the webinar as well. But if you want to look at ways to boost your insulin sensitivity, to improve your sleep, to reduce your stress, and your underlying reason is to get to a healthier weight and to not feel like you are being kind of bullied by this time of life. And if you are also, whether or not you've had your hormones levels checked, whether or not you know what stage of perimenopause or menopause you're in, it doesn't matter. All this will apply. This is going to help and support all women over 40. And if you know of anybody that needs to hear this, please share this show. Please share the link that is right here in the show notes with them. So again, all women over 40, what I'm going to share is going to help support you and your friends with or without a type 1 diagnosis of diabetes. There's such a crossover because insulin resistance, like I mentioned, it happens for all of us. It looks different. It might feel, and the approach might be a little bit different. But understanding this information that I will share is going to be impactful so that you can better make those decisions going forward. So if you're struggling, please reach out and sign up, grab your seat. We can't wait to see you there, and share with other women who might benefit as well. So just to summarize, I'm on a mission to help you women. Trimming the weight and trimming down is the number one feedback I'm getting from many of you. And it doesn't surprise me. Like I mentioned, I went through it myself, that stubborn weight that made no sense. And I was looking for ways as well. And I'm going to share all those ways with you. And I can't wait for you to come and feel happier, to feel less stress, and to feel less burned out. Let's avoid the burnout, and let's address this time of life in these post-reproductive years with resilience and hope. And let's do this together. So I sure hope you decide to join us. And again, just visit the link right here. The name of the webinar is Trim Down After 40. And again, you can visit abundanthealthwithmelissa.com/trim down. And that will lead you right to an easy way to sign up and join us. Again, we will be in that live Zoom session on September 17th. It's a Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And again, if you can't join us live, that's okay. You can get the replay. And there'll be plenty of opportunity to reach out to me and to be part of the conversation, and definitely to take part in the action steps that I will be sharing. So I'm here to serve and to love on you all. And I sure hope that this topic did that for you. And know that this is a very real struggle and a very real time of our life as we are evolving and aging and all of that. But know that there is hope. There are solutions, and there are ways to get past it and to conquer it. And I hope this episode found you well, and we'll talk soon. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to the Type 1 Midlife Podcast. We are so grateful for the time that we spent together today. And if this conversation resonated with you, or you just love connecting with others living with T1D, please take a moment to leave a rating and review. Your feedback helps us reach more people who need this community and resources. And if you realize you need more support than you're currently getting, remember, you don't have to struggle alone. Visit me at abundanthealthwithmelissa.com for free resources on mastering type 1 diabetes in menopause, and to stay connected and learn about my coaching programs. We look forward to being together next Monday. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a single episode. Remember that together we can age gracefully with type 1 diabetes.